may be traumatized in another way. That is, mentally the child may be disturbed, or emotionally the child may be missing out on something. So you cannot see the physical wounds or injuries, but the child is get damaged from within. The psychological impact is too much for the stress that the child is under. Maybe verbal abuse that happens within the confines of the home, where no one knows what's happening. The child will be suddenly withdrawn or something like that. Now, if I would like to talk about mental health, ma'am. With regard to mental health, what do you have to share, and what are your experiences on that? Let's talk about mental health.
Yeah, I think mental health is an area that needs to be focused a lot. In Canada, yes, we have a system where due importance is given to mental health, because if you don't have the mental health, you cannot function, right? I mean, it's just like how your physical health is impacted. Mental health is too very, what do you call, um, restricting. Like if your mental health is affected, it also affects your day-to-day functioning, right? And mental health, it's kind of invisible, I would say, in some certain cases. Like in certain cases, very visible. The person is unkept, talking to themselves, or, doing bizarre, behaviors and stuff like that. So it's visible, right? But in certain cases, it's not visible, right? Like, for example, we think depression is like sitting in a corner, eating nothing, talking nothing, that is what depression is. But depression can also mean other stuff. The person who's overly angry may also go through depression. Okay. Overeating can also be a sign of depression, right? So, and also people who are depressed can hide it very well, and they're also functioning too. Like you might find your colleague or your neighbor, or your relative who's got a professional job, who talks well, who presents well, but they might be having, their own battles, and we don't know if, they're going through depression or not, because some people are very good at hiding it, and they're very good at functioning, right? But what happens with that, in that scenario, is they might be good at hiding it, and they might function day to day, but after a period of time, they get burnt out. It's just like a volcano erupting. Like there is a build up, and then blasts up, right? So that's what happens with people who hide it well and who functions even though they're depressed. But how long will they carry on? Like until the thing blows off, right? So by that time, it would have been too late. Like I want to share an example where I heard there was this doctor, and there was the patient in the consulting room. The doctor and the patient, they were like talking, and there was a consultation going on, and the doctor excused himself for a few minutes. And the patient thought, okay, maybe some emergency that the doctor had to, attend to. So the patient was seated there, and the doctor just left the room. After some time, there's no news of the doctor. And then that's when the patient realized, between that gap, the doctor went and committed suicide. It's a real life case that happened, right? Uh, and then you wonder why, what's happening. That doctor was like providing consultation to a patient, and in between the consultation, that person went and committed suicide. And that's very alarming, right? I mean, you would think, it's mental health is just madness. No, there is it's a spectrum, right? There's a lot of things like depression, anxiety, so many things, you will find in mental health. So it's not just people who are cuckoo or going mad, no. And nowadays, because of the world that we are living in, it's such a complex and challenging world, we have more cases of mental health coming up. And it's also important that we build the emotional resiliency to handle our problems, right? Because I'm sure any living human being will have their set of problems. You, me, anybody, right? That's life. It comes with problems. So, but then how you overcome that or how you handle that, that is important. So it's very important to let the younger generation know about emotional intelligence, emotional resiliency. Like how do you move on rather than just being stuck? Because we've also come across people who are like fixated with their problems. They can't move on. Okay. And I'm also like, to an extent, I used to be like that. I have no shame in saying that. But then because of my social work skills, because of my life experience, it's gotten better. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm still a work in progress too, just like any other person. But that emotional resiliency, I think, is very important. Yes, you might have downfalls, you might have challenges, you might have issues, problems, but you overcome that, be resilient, move on, and pick yourself up, right? Rather than being stuck and stewing over that problem. And that's something that I've always, tried to inculcate in my son too, because my parents, we've never had that kind of conversation, right? Of course, they provided me with basic necessities of life, like good education, good food, good clothing, a good house, and all that. But it's also important that parents have the conversations with their kids about emotional intelligence, how to regulate your emotions and how to be resilient, right? Yeah, so that needs to be a focus in India, especially because we don't talk about all that. And I think back in my days, we never used to have platforms like podcasts or platforms where people openly talk about challenges, right? And their life experiences, because everything is behind walls, closed doors, right? Nobody wants to, talk about these things because it's like you don't want other people knowing your business, right? But you need to talk about it, otherwise how would people know, right? I mean, like, and there might be other people who can benefit, from your life experiences, and that's what I believe in, and that's one of the reasons why I signed up for this too, because what if it helps some person in some way, right? Yeah.
Yes, dear. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing all of that. Thank you so much for adding a lot of positive energy to this platform by sharing all your experiences and what is the real truth about mental health and how far India is giving importance to mental health and how the Western countries are prioritizing mental health. And,
Yeah.
immediate action should be taken. We shouldn't delay when we
Yes.
talk about mental health, like, oh, maybe next week we will go, or we'll meet a counselor, maybe later on. Again, if I feel like I'm triggered again, then I will go. So it's best to meet a professional or a counselor or a mental health professional or psychologist,
And when you say
therapist.
professional psychologist or counselor, people have this hesitancy. Not, I have
Yes.
not seen that here, but I've seen that back in India, right? Like, oh, when we suggest, why don't we go, I mean, like, to a counselor, or why don't you take her or him to a counselor, so that to get that professional help. Oh, no, there's nothing wrong with her. There's nothing wrong with him. It's not about having anything wrong. It's about how to help that person. That's what people need to understand. Just because, okay, you go to counseling because you're broken or there's something wrong with you. No, it's sometimes you need that professional help. And you would be surprised, social workers here too go for counseling, because it's very similar, like, a doctor, he treats patients, the doctor can also fall sick, right? So if the doctor falls sick, will he just keep quiet and say, oh, I'm a doctor, so I'm not going to another doctor for consultation? No. So it's similar even for counselors or social workers. Even we also have problems in our life. Sometimes we also need professional help, right? So this is not something to be ashamed of. You should think about it as a way that you're helping yourself with the use of a professional. Yeah.
Yes, dear. Thank you, ma'am, for elaborating on that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and views and for giving us the right kind of awareness. Prioritize yourself, as our guest said that, Saki ma'am mentioned that you wear your oxygen mask first. Wear your oxygen mask first and save yourself first. You prioritize yourself and then you'll be able to prioritize others around you. Thank you, ma'am, so much. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Stay blessed and stay connected, friends.